Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today I want to talk with you about serverless and this viral post that happened on Twitter where the developer of Kara app had a bill from Vercel of $96,000. So this is insane. And a lot of people start questioning about the lack of control of serverless infrastructure, where you don't control when there's spikes, when there's a lot of traffic coming in, and you can have huge bills. Of course, there are mechanisms to control that, and we'll come to that. But whenever we see these posts on Twitter, everybody starts questioning it and thinking, should we have serverless or not? And today I want to share with you my experience of building Virtually, a virtual event platform where we have thousands of people connected simultaneously on the same event. And we didn't never had these issues of big spikes on our bills of serverless functions. So stay tuned and let's share the advantage and disadvantage of using serverless and comparing it also with building our own VPS. Because recently I'm also starting a new project where I'm trying to deploy it on a new VPS instead of deploying it on serverless functions, for example. So stay tuned and let's dive in. So let's start with the definition of what is a serverless system. A serverless system is not a system completely without servers, but it's a system where the cloud provider fully manages everything for us. And we just consume their APIs, their services, so that we just only the things that need to be run are really consumed. One of the biggest examples of serverless components and systems are the serverless functions. So those serverless functions are functions that are deployed on the cloud providers. And when you need to execute them, you call them, they turn on the machines, they spin up this code into their servers, they run it, and then they turn it off. Of course, there's periods there, they keep warm for a while. There's a different mechanism to not always turn on and turn off. But essentially, your code is only run when it's needed and when there's demand. So this is super beneficial in some aspects where you don't need to have something always on. And it has been more and more popular with the growth of cloud providers. Another big advantage of serverless systems is that they auto-scale. If you have spikes of traffic coming in, you don't need to worry about provisioning all your servers and all your infrastructure to handle this demand. So the systems usually automatically auto-scale to handle all the demand that you have. As a developer, this is such a big relief on our minds that we don't need to be worried if the systems will be provisioning correctly, if there's enough resources for all the potential spike. And in addition to that, you are not over-consuming because the systems are only running according to the demand that they have. So this is really super nice also as a developer. And that's what helped me on Virtually to not worry with anything regarding infrastructure. I completely trusted Google Cloud and Google Firebase to automatically scale up and down my instance. And I could handle more than 5,000 people concurrently in the same event. There's a lot of benefits using serverless functions. And if I had to choose just without any other concerns, I would favor serverless in most of the cases. But with these huge spikes that you can have on your own systems, there also can be huge bills on your cloud providers. Depending on the cloud providers, they have some mechanism of controlling it. Others have different ones, others more expensive and so on. There's a lot of parameters. And that's one of the hardest things regarding serverless, is that you cannot predict your budget, your bills for your cloud providers. There are a lot of variables that enter into play, like the bandwidth, the inbound, outbound, the number of minutes for each function, the number of reads on your database, the number of writes, deletes. There's so many parameters that influence your bill that you cannot predict it very much. And that's really, as an entrepreneur, that's a big challenge because you need to keep your costs controlled. And that's something that I had in mind when building Fiercely from day one. And at some point, I also restricted myself on some features or on some development because I need to have the costs under control. And this was always on the top of my mind. But we could kept it always under control. We had the budget alert, so I was always monitoring if there was something going outside of the norm, and always controlling it. But I'd say that this is one of the biggest challenges of a serverless system, that you don't have any control on your bills and your costs, and also not predicting it at all. Another big challenge of serverless systems that influence a lot the way you develop your applications are the cold start problem. Serverless systems are not running if they are not needed. So whenever you need to start and run a new function or new piece of code, they need to start their own instance and deploy this function on their own servers. This can make the user wait 3 to 4 seconds when calling a specific API. For example, in the case of Fiercely, when someone needed to search for another participant, if no one had run this function recently, basically if the function is still called and not turned, the user needs to wait 3 to 4 seconds before getting the results. In terms of user experience, this is such a bad UX that the users can really feel it. So on Fiercely, what we did is to try to not rely on functions to execute operations. By using Google Firebase, we connect directly from the client to the database. So this allows us to directly change the data without going through functions. But there are some cases that we cannot do that. Like, for example, searching a participant because we are using Elasticsearch. So we need to go through our own backend before performing the search. For example, another case is to authorize a user in the event. When you first enter into an event, we cannot connect or self-authorize someone into the event directly in the database. So we need to go that through a backend function where we make all the security and all the verification aspects. So in these cases, the user need to wait a few seconds if they get into a cold start function. This is not a big deal, but in some type of application, this can be really hard. And you need to change the way you develop. So you don't favor APIs, but you favor more the direct contact to the database in the case of Fiercely using Google Firebase. Another issue that I faced also in some cases with serverless functions is that because the functions are run on the cloud, they usually have more limited execution time. For example, if I still remember correctly, on Firebase, you can have functions running up to 9 minutes. So imagine that you are doing long daily tasks that requires a lot of time to compute the data. This might land into this execution time. It's not always find ways to circumvent this issue, but it's still something to keep in mind. Another issue challenge that we have, another important point to take into account that usually we don't focus so much because it's in the beginning of the project, it's not a big deal, but on the long term, this can become harder. It's the vendor lock-in. For example, Fiercely, I cannot change the backend system. I cannot use another cloud provider or another type of database because the system is so built into Google Firebase that we cannot just use another one. This would require a lot of development effort, so it makes it nearly impossible at this stage to change it. So something to keep in mind if you are worried with this vendor lock-in, these platform risks, keep in mind about this usage of serverless systems, and especially using all these cloud providers and their native services. One last challenge that I want to mention is also regarding security and the usage of many different systems. For me, using serverless components and cloud services are by definition much more secure than develop our own VPS and controlling our own security aspects, because they are proficient in this topic. They are the ones that know how to do it. So they usually build in the security aspects and have the best practice. However, by using many different systems, you are more open to attack vectors. More systems where you might have permissions that are not correctly set, that's points where you could eventually be attacked. So keep in mind about it. Try to not also use all systems that are available. Try to reduce to the minimum so that you reduce the space where people can attack you. But despite all these challenges, I really like serverless functions. The simplicity, the scalability, the easiness of use, the speed that we can develop new things, the free of mind that we have by knowing that the system will perform. all the security aspects that are built in by definition. This really makes me trust the serverless systems, and we can implement mechanisms to control all these challenges, and especially these spikes in the builds that we have. So whenever I can, I'll try to favor these type of systems. However, recently I'm starting a new project, a project that is focused on the German market, and the privacy is really a concern. So this time I'm using a VPS to host this project instead of relying on the serverless functions. I'm doing this particularly for this project because I want to have full control of where my data is and where I'm hosting all my services, and try to reduce the number of different services that I'm using. This is completely against what I've been doing for all my previous entrepreneur life, where I always rely on these serverless functions. But I wanted to experiment also with hosting my own machine. And in this particular case of this project, it truly makes sense because I want to have full control of where my data is. So I created an instance on Hetzner, a server that is provisioned with a certain quantity. And that's something that worries me. Will it handle all the demand? It's a project that might not have huge spikes of traffic, but nevertheless, it's something that you need to take into account. And that's mostly what's on the top of our minds when we start developing something, is that in the case that it will ever grow tremendously, will the system handle it? But from what I've read from or shared with other developers, those machines can handle a lot of traffic. So this is not really an issue in the beginning of the project. This is something that we can incrementally increase the complexity of our systems and the scalability of our own machines. So let's see how this journey will go. Something that I really worried when doing or managing our own machines is the security aspects. While on the serverless component and infrastructure, we have the cloud providers to manage it, most of the security, and we need to make sure that the permissions are controlled. In this case, I need to fully manage all the security aspect of my VPS. So because this is something that I'm not used to it, I'm much more fragile in this aspect than if I would rely on a system to do it. There are already systems that you can build on top of it or to host your machines and to help protecting it. So for example, I'm using Cloudflare to protect all the access to my machine. I'm hoping that I'm doing it in the correct way. This is also going to spend more time on that aspect, but already using these systems help you in a certain way, but you still need to follow the best practice. You still need to learn. You still need to configure it, and you are much more error prone to breaking something. In another part that I don't like managing these machines is all the infrastructure aspect. Again, this is something that I'm not used to. It's something that I don't like. So I need to rely on specific applications to help me manage it. I don't want to enter into the command line and manage everything from the command line. I'm not that geek to be able to do it. So luckily there are tools that allows you to create infrastructures or UIs on top of your infrastructure. So I'm using Coolify, which is really a simple platform that you can build on top of your own machines. The setup is super easy, and it allows you to deploy new containers, new applications, and in a very easy way. So I created this Coolify application inside my own machine that will manage my own server, and I can build on top of this server the application that I want. So then I connected it to GitHub to automatically get the code from my new application, and whenever there's a new commit to this GitHub project, it will automatically deploy and create a new Docker with the next JS application inside it. So the setup was really easy. It's not as simple as using Verso, but let's say in Verso you can have something running in 10 minutes. Here, if you have already the Coolify running in the base infrastructure, in order to set up in the beginning might be like 15-20 minutes instead of 10. So it's not a big difference, to be honest. And it's very simple knowing that this is your own servers instead of setting up everything via the console. So I'm glad that these systems exist. Otherwise, I would not even enter into this journey of having my own VPS, because this is really a nightmare for me to manage all these instances. One last point that it's on the back of my mind regarding VPS machines are the backups itself and the fault tolerance. Like when you rely on cloud providers, they usually have all the fault tolerance mechanisms in place. Here, a machine is corrupted, they have some other machines that have backups of your data and the data your system can still working. While if you own your own machine, you don't have that in place. So you need to manage all these backups. So in case there's something happening to your machine and to your data, that you have a mechanism to roll back and replay it. So this is something that I have not yet put in place. I'm still in the very beginning of this project, but it's something that I really need to put in place, and I don't want to neglect that part and learn with this journey. So it's important to have reliable system, a system that you can trust and roll back. So you cannot rely on the cloud providers to do it. You need to do it yourself. So that's another drawback of managing your own instance. But I still love serverless. And I think if I can, I'll go back to serverless functions. But I want to experience this new journey of building my own VPS. And maybe I will like it. Maybe I can have everything under control and keep using it. But it's a good, as a developer experience, it's very good to know and to understand how to manage all these machines. Because you open your spectrum and you are open to new type of tools and type of system to develop, and not only constrain your development to one specific technology. Yeah, so let's see how this will go. I'll keep sharing, especially more about this new project that I'm doing. Again, with my co-founder of Fiercely, Alex, which is really nice to keep working with him. And let's see where we all go. And I hope you enjoy these sharings of my experience running serverless functions. And if you need any help with building it, understanding how this works, understanding all the complexity and simplicity at the same time of serverless systems, let me know. Happy to help. And until next episode, see you everybody. Cheers.